A couple weeks ago, though, I had the liberty, Moms for Liberty, that is. I had the pleasure, the privilege of being part of a Minds event that had a couple panels. I obviously jumped on the election integrity panel because that's my specialty. But to do so, they said, Pasta, you have to join, you have to become a part of this other panel, which is America becoming a communist country. We need a leftist perspective. It's not that I am a communist, but I do have sympathy for countries that do have communism and whatnot. Jamie, we're going to play the first part of the clip real quick. Why don't we save it to the end? Let's just jump right in, because since what we just talked about the last segment, the person who moderated that panel, her name is Tiffany Justice, and she was one of the co-founders of Moms for Liberty. And you can throw that up there, her Twitter up there real quick. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Moms for Liberty. You can see Tiffany Justice on some of the mainstream media shows out there, some on the right. She's been on Bannon before, but she also goes on Joy Reid's show, and she debates a little bit with Joy Reid. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people, especially on the left, Dave, where we come from, like I said, we came from Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. We're not, coming from the right. We're coming from guys on the left who are going, wait a second, there's a thought out there that there's a conspiracy to ruin families by the ruling class. And why would they do that? It's easy to crush a society. I think a lot of times when people blame Moms for Liberty, they also look at them saying, oh, these people just want to get rid of certain books. They want to force their Christianity on people. But I think there is a mechanism where it's more than just about what books they can read, but the actual behavior in which a child is allowed to act within a society. In California, how they're allowed to get around, not even talking to their parents about, sex changes or COVID vaccine. And it's a little scary, even coming from a leftist perspective, when you go, wait a second, this is not really kosher, man. Like, I'm not cool with this. I was on your side to fight for your freedoms to be what you want and say what you want, but not to indoctrinate our kids.
Yeah, somehow you can be banned as a student in California from wearing a baseball cap.
Yeah.
But if you want to dress up as a furry and someone pulls your tail and then the person hisses at you.
Yeah.
That's normal behavior. That's fine. And that's a real story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring in our mom, Tiffany Justice, the Moms for Liberty. She is with us today. Thank you so much, Tiffany Justice, for joining the show today. Thank you so much for coming on. You're dealing with two emotional young men. I don't know if we're young, but we're both been going through the situation. I was able to talk to you briefly about what I'm experiencing in California. I don't know if you heard David's situation, but literally his child he has sole custody, and they're refusing to return him over. What is Moms for Liberty exactly, and who and what are you looking to protect?
Sure. So Moms for Liberty is a nonprofit grassroots organization. I'm a mom of 4, and in 2021, I was coming off the 4 years on school board. Tina Deskovich, who helped to found Moms for Liberty, also was serving on a school board during that time. And serving an elected office on a school board, and then having 4 kids in public school, 3 different public schools, really gave me such an interesting perspective on the way that policies are created, the way that they are meant to be implemented, and then the way that they actually are implemented in the school and what the effect is for the students. So when COVID hit, you can just imagine what it was like to not only experience that with my children, who now range from 19 to 12, but then 15 to 8. But to have my friends going through that, and to be a school board member, and to have all of the thousands of kids in the school district going through that. And what we saw was the government lost their freaking minds. They just thought that, I watched school board members who were elected to serve constituents abdicate their authority to bureaucrats. And they were scared to make decisions. They were scared to hold their authority. Everyone except Ron DeSantis, to be honest with you. Ron DeSantis was a rock star and held his authority and leaned into the Constitution and our founding documents. And lo and behold, it was a good way to go forward through COVID. But what we saw was a lot of cowardice, a lot of using kids to shoulder the burden of adult fear, and a lot of positioning by the teachers' unions and others to use COVID to their advantage. And Tina and I like to say we saw behind the education curtain when COVID happened. excuse me, when we served on school board. And then COVID happened and all of America got to see behind the education curtain. And now there are no more secrets. Let the sun shine in. It's the best disinfectant.
So what is the biggest difference that you would say that when you were going to school to what we see today, especially when the COVID era happened? Because there is a theory behind this whole situation. And I'd like to get to the theory the second part. I know that, I think you heard us discuss that we met on the left. We were Bernie Sanders supporters and Tulsi Gabbard supporters.
Now that doesn't exist anymore, but sure.
Yeah. Well, now it's like we got pie on the face for saying, wait a second. I think a lot of these mothers, especially the Moms for Liberty, had a point over here. I know that I wasn't allowed to discuss my sexual preference in school. I didn't have a flag with something, but yet today it's just like I'm at odds with it because I was all about defending someone's position and a right to be who they want to be, but I never defended a position where we're going to indoctrinate and teach our children stuff.
Craig, yeah. I remember seeing my teacher at the supermarket and being surprised that she ate food. Like the idea that teachers are getting into the intimate details of their lives, of their sex lives, of their identity, of the way they perceive themselves, of the way they want to be perceived with children in a classroom is so incredibly inappropriate. No one gets to bring their whole self to work. No one does. Why would teachers get to with students? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, so where is this coming from and why is it being allowed, or is there an agenda behind this?
Yeah, there is. Thank you for asking. There's an agenda. So our colleges of education really stopped preparing. I think there's an argument to be made that they were never really preparing teachers to be prepared for the classroom, but certainly the goal of public education changed. At the same time, the expectations of parents did not. I think parents still want what they've always wanted. I think they want kids to learn to read, to write, to do math. I think they want their children to be given practicable skills that help them to unfold their full potential in life, whatever that is that the child chooses and the parents help with, right? But never did parents want to co-parent with the government. We do not co-parent with the government. But government schools changed their want from teaching kids how to read and write and do math, although I know there are those that would debate me that was never their intended goal. But they really leaned into creating little social justice warriors. They wanted to awaken a critical consciousness in the child. And there's a Brazilian Marxist theologian named Paulo Freire. I don't say his last name right because I don't speak Portuguese, but you can look him up. Freire. Freire. Yep, that's right. And you can and look a little bit about, he wrote 2 books, The Politics of Education and The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And it was all about really awakening this critical consciousness in the child. So now in our schools, we say, oh, why are the kids have so much mental health issues? What's going on? Well, their curriculum, what they're learning is all this toxic critical ideology, this critical pedagogy, the way that the information is being taught. So you can't just look at a book and say, oh, this book looks fine, because it's all about the way the teacher is instructed to teach that book. Then they get to marinate in their feelings all day long with social emotional learning. That's a lot of fun, right? Susie's dog died. Now everyone knows Susie's dog died, but let's go on to math. Let's just wallow in social emotional learning. It's a programming mechanism. We can talk more about that. And then, they're not being taught to read. So you ask me, what's the biggest difference between when I went to school and now? Children are not learning how to read. Only a third of 4th graders on the National Assessment for Educational Progress, called the Nation's Report Card, only a third of kids are reading on grade level in 4th grade. And the numbers are worse for Hispanic students and Black students at 21% and 17%. In New York City schools, only 11% of Black students reading on grade level. So we have a literacy crisis going on in America. And we've got a teachers union and a school system that's more concerned with teaching our children they may have been born in the wrong body and allowing them to be furries and whatever nonsense is going on than teaching kids how to read.
Okay, so you put the what there, this kind of mentality, this way of teaching, this kind of social, about someone's feelings. Yeah. This. So we before the show started, we talked about this before, and we used the term, and I think I've used the term before. Now, obviously, I would probably, where we disagree is who it's coming from, right? The Marxism that you would like, and I said on the stage that you were there. I'm like, oh, the funny thing about social Marxism. It didn't come from Marx. It came from the campus years after Marx. You know what I'm saying? We can put that aside for a second. I know there's people out there that would also like to blame Mao in China, and that all comes into play. But
Well,
at the end of the day,
Mao was just Marx with Chinese characteristics. I mean, with Chinese. So I mean, Marx inspired Mao. So I don't know.
Like I said, I think it's best for this
just
conversation that we put that aside for a second, because
okay,
here's the
sure.
thing.
We can put facts aside. Let's go, Craig.
Yeah, well, but I do believe there is this kind of mechanism in play, and you had talked about it, and it's the why. And David and I talked before the show, and we like to use this term out there, and I use this term a lot. And a lot of, this is why a lot of conservative and populist right people have become my friends. And they're like, I never heard a lefty use the term social engineer. I'm like, well, yeah, we use it all the time. There's these group of social engineers, which are homegrown, right? They don't come from China. They don't come from Marx. They come from our own ruling elite class, our predator class of sorts, I believe.
Yep.
Either way, at the end of the day, I think we can agree that there's something there, maybe who it's coming from, but why? Is there a plan, a plot to wreck the family? And why would they do that? Because I know
stabilize the country, to
Right.
destabilize America, to take America out of the position of being the most powerful country in the world. So America is a beacon of light. I shared with you when I moderated the panel that I did that we do a lot of international interviews, and we had a reporter from Japan say that America used to be a shining light, and now the world is seeing that dim. So America stands in the way of a lot of bad people doing bad things, or historically has. God, let's hope. And right now America is being weakened in many different ways. China doesn't want a strong America. Russia doesn't want a strong America. You can, you can say, we can debate all we want, but this is a global movement. What's happening in the United States as far as the sexualization of children and the destabilization of the family unit is happening all over the world. It's happening in Africa. I mean, so, this is a ruling elite that want a very easily to control population, and it doesn't matter if kids can read or write because they don't need to.
I think one of the most
in the New World Order.
Yeah,
one of the most clear signs too that the predator class definitely does not care about our children at all is the fact that they will dodge the censors, mandated a certain medical intervention during COVID that children, of course, did not need. I'd argue nobody needed. And I'm a private tutor myself. And I had, out of my 8 students in 2021, 7 of them were injured to varying degrees, and 1 of them had to be hospitalized. And I would ask them how many, and they'd be like, 3. I have to get a 3rd, or I'm not allowed to go to school. I mean, clearly there is an agenda here, because facts are facts. You don't even need to have a political opinion to see this. And it's happening, and it's going to intensify.
Tiffany, okay, so we just talked about what's going on in the schools, and obviously, there can be a plan implemented. Obviously, I think we would probably think a little bit different about why, maybe, who knows? I mean,
no, I know you keep saying who knows, but we do know.
Yeah. We'll go ahead. I mean, because here's the thing: the only difference that I don't know, because I don't, and you saw on the stage that I was on that we argued about the bombs being dropped on Hiroshima, right? Like, there are people out there who kind of justify and said that saved lives, that it needed to be happen, whereas I'm saying no, that should have never happened. It should never happen again. A lot of people believe that America was always, a beacon for life, of truth and justice. And I would say, no, we've always been an imperialistic, an empire going around stealing resources and doing what we need to do. I would never answer the question. Well, I would never answer the question. I would say, do you love your country? And I'm like, I don't know what that question means. I don't know if I love my country's government. I can tell you I don't, but I do love my countrymen. And I make it a point to say that I love the people in here. And I think sometimes the criticisms we get as citizens is not really merited, that there are some great people in this country. And I don't want to look away from that. But I don't know if this is a situation where an empire is just caving in on itself from everything it's been doing for quite some time, and it's catching up. But I do agree that there is something going on, that is really trying to crush the family unit, the family itself. And it's obvious because it's not just done in schools and in the courts. It's also being done economically. Right now, you need 2-3 jobs just to pay the bills. They're making sure that the family unit can't be around.
They're all captured institutions. Education has been captured. The court systems have been captured. It's not, Santa that captured them, Craig. Why do you think it's happening?
I believe it's an empire of just, once again, a ruling class, an elite class, a predator class. These are the same people that we talk about, the Freemasons with Jeffrey Epstein, that, Jeffrey Epstein, he's no longer here. Ghislaine Maxwell went to jail for trafficking children to no one. They never pay, a price. I believe this is more about these bloodline families with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all them, with their plan just coming to fruition now.
They've been involved in an enormous amount of social engineering in America as far as the social emotional learning that I was talking about. I mean, that's all been funded by them, and public education in general, and the way that it's grown has been funded by, a number of very generous philanthropists who felt like they knew better than, the people.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the way the court systems are? Do you think they're part of this plot and this plan? Because from what I'm witnessing right now, and I got to briefly talk to you about what's going on, it's not just happening in the schools where they're, littering our children's minds. It seems like it's happening in the courts as well.
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely is. But I mean, you say it's happening like what? It's just a captured institution. It's the long march. They got elected. They didn't do anything illegal. They didn't do anything that we can't do. They just engaged in our civic process and got elected to stuff, and then or got jobs places, and then worked up into the ranks. So then they could hire. I mean, they entryism. Then they could hire the people that they wanted to have in. This is entryism, a communist tactic, and I mean, they just did what you're supposed to do if you want to control stuff. And so, Americans, we ceded the ground. We ceded the ground on education. We were not engaged. And then if you look at the court systems, think about when judges run for office. All of these judges that run for office. Does anybody know anything about the judges? When you walk in and you go to vote, do you know what that judge's position is going to be on parental rights? Do you know what that judge is? I mean, so it's up to the people to become informed. What Moms for Liberty has tried to do is really hold the torch of liberty in the communities and say, we're going to endorse only in school board races. It's the only place we endorse. But on issues, we'll allow people, elected candidates or people running for office, to come and talk about these issues so they can speak to the things that we care about. And we're going to hold people's feet to the fire on issues, right? And so, you ask about the courts. Yeah, we ignored them. We haven't been paying attention, but who has been paying attention? The left. They paid a lot of attention to our court system. And that's why for Americans who I think bad things happen, and then they're like, okay, well, this bad thing happened, but when it gets to court, that's going to be where it's going to be decided, and right's going to be right and wrong's going to be wrong, because everybody knows what right and wrong is, right? That's the way Americans think. But we just had a Supreme Court justice tell us that she doesn't know what a woman is. So does she know what right is? Is her right the same as yours? And what you're seeing in a lot of the courts now with these activist judges, much like the activist teachers, are rulings that we would normally think would never be possible. We had rulings in a parental rights case regarding a child being transitioned. And the court said it did not shock the conscience of the court that the child had signed 6 pages of forms, changing their name at school, changing their pronouns at school, deciding where they would sleep on field trips. And the parent was never involved, told about it, no consent from the parent. And the court said, nah, we're not that worried about it. We feel like it was in the best interest of the child. And that's what the new Title IX stuff is basically just opened the door to.
I was going to ask about the Title IX stuff, about you guys are just suing the Biden administration over Title IX, right? So Can you give us a little insight to that?
Yeah, first federal lawsuit. I'm very excited. You can see the Biden Title IX overhaul is ridiculous. It changes the definition of sex to include gender identity, sexual orientation, pregnancy-related conditions. And basically, someone can change their gender from day to day. Your child is now expected at school to go along with that, to use whatever name the child wants, whatever pronouns they want. This is boys on girls' sports teams. This is boys in girls' locker rooms. This is the end of due process on our college campuses. If you're a boy or a girl and you're accused of sexual harassment or sexual assault, it used to be that the police would be called, there would be a criminal investigation, and there would be due process where you would be able to, hear the evidence against you and be able to tell your side of the story. All of that is gone. Biden has just wiped that away, including the criminality portion, which just doesn't make sense, right? And so parents need to be aware of that and talking to their kids about that on college campuses. But in the schools, I mean, the idea that, we've passed all these parental rights laws, Craig, parents' bills of rights across different states. In Florida, we said no gender identity and sexual orientation instruction in grades K through 3. 80% of Americans agree with us on this issue. This is not a complicated thing. The least interesting thing about a child should be their sexual orientation. Honestly, I can't even believe we're having this conversation about kids and who they want to have sex with. What a sick thing to even think about talking about. And yet somehow in public schools, this is done in the name of inclusivity. And so Title IX is a mess. And so we filed this lawsuit. It's very exciting. It's Kansas, Alaska, Utah, Wyoming, Moms for Liberty, Young Americans for Freedom. And they have 3 college students. We have 4 moms who are standing up using their real names, fighting back against this. This is compelled speech in schools. Your kid's going to have to, as I said, use the pronouns of the teacher that the teacher wants or other students. They're going to have to lie. You're going to have to tell your kid to lie about the reality, about truth. And so we're very excited to take a stand against the Biden administration, hoping for a nationwide preliminary injunction. We're a nationwide organization. We're in 48 states, 130,000 members. We have over 300 chapters. And so we're hoping that there will be a nationwide preliminary injunction, which means that this rule will not go into effect on August 1st as it is supposed to. And we'll be able to stop any of these harms from happening to kids. And then we'll be able to deal with the rule, hopefully in the next administration when President Trump wins.
So we should have a conversation about elections.
That's my personal opinion, by the way, because I don't think Trump lets this stand. So
yeah. Well, I mean, and the Trump election itself, we can talk about elections, and you know how I feel about that. You talk about some of these judges, right? When you have a mechanism that's people are selected, not elected. That's why we'll get these situations we're dealing with. But you've been willing to go on other shows. You go on Joy and Reed, people who disagree with you. You use the term inclusivity. We heard that so many times, like, we got to get drop boxes because it's inclusivity. Those who normally can't vote can now vote, right? No IDs. We need to be inclusive over here. You said the term inclusivity. You go on shows where people disagree with you. How do you do this? How do you talk to people when, for instance, when I would talk to Dr. Cornel West and I was doing an interview with him, he would talk about having respect for our precious gay and trans people, that we want to have respect for people out there no matter what. How do you kind of like convey that message of like, okay, we want to respect anybody the way they identify, whatnot, but this is children. How do you kind of repair that bridge or extend that olive branch out there when you have people who have such a complete different ideology than you have right now?
So the way this has never been about inclusivity is the fact that that the children who think that they're transgender are a very small minority. And in many schools, they've been offered accommodations like a private dressing room or a private locker room, right? When I was on school board, there was a student who thought they were transgender. By the way, there's no such thing as a transgender child. I know that's a controversial thing to say right now in 2024, but I promise you in about 6 to 12 months, it won't be. Because the world is changing on this issue. If you don't know about the CAST report, that's a 4-year study that just came out of the United Kingdom, out of England, showing the horrible harms of gender-affirming care, so-called gender-affirming care on children with rates of liver cancer, testicular cancer, just horrible things being done in the name of, helping children. Big pharma helping children to be their true selves for the first time ever in how long of human history. But we are at a real crossroads, Craig, of modern medicine and in truth really crashing into what the Biden administration or what's being pushed as far as gender ideology in all of these schools. And I don't think we've ever seen anything like it before. At the very moment where everyone's waking up, and maybe you could tell me, what do you think the average person knows about some of the things that I'm talking about? Are they aware of what's happening in the schools with the secret transitions? Are they aware of the puberty blockers?
I would say no. And I during COVID, I saw a list of like 8 bills they were trying to pass, and one of them is that the kids don't have to tell their parents about wanting to consent to the shot. And it was like, do people out there know about this? And when I started talking to people on the streets, nobody knew about it. Nobody knew it was a bill that was going to be introduced. I don't think a lot of people, and we were just talking about the situation. My friend Dave was going through this whole situation with his child, and I've been going through a situation that I kind of mentioned to you, and it was like, I couldn't believe this happened to me. Like, I had no clue about any of this stuff going on until it hits you square in the face. So I would say a lot of parents don't know about this.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because here's the problem. There's been a false consensus of medical associations and medical institutions on this issue. And what's happening is we're seeing Europe wake up and come out and say, no, they're going to take a watch and wait approach when it comes to children who are presenting the gender dysphoria. Florida, the Board of Medicine changed the standard of care. No longer are the puberty blockers or medical transitions open to minors. We've seen 24 states pass laws against it. But the truth is that we have a real capture of our medical institutions, with like the American Academy of Pediatrics never really answering for this CAS report, this study that shows after 4 years, so many harms for children when they get these medications. And you have to think, if parents, when I was 12 or 16 or 19, I didn't know I wanted to be a mom. I have 4 kids now, but I never knew that that's what I wanted in my life. And, I've sat while girls who are detransitioning have wept as they have talked about, like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to carry a child. I don't, if I have a child, I have my breast removed at the age of 15. I don't know if I'm ever going to I'm not going to be able to ever breastfeed. What 15-year-old can make a decision about whether or not they want to have children in the rest of, for the rest of their lives? And I think it's really hard for parents that have gone along with this, to really grapple with the fact that they've made a mistake. And so I think that's why you see people dig in so much. But does it sound okay to anyone to stop the natural, healthy development of a child? And the idea that you could stop puberty and the secondary sexual characteristics of a child from developing and not affect their mental development, their physical development, their brain development in any way? Of course you do. And it's just, it's like Mengele style stuff. I think we're going to look back on this time and in history, and it will be written about like lobotomies. Like, how the hell did we ever think this was a good idea to do? And from the first time I heard about it, Craig, from the first time I heard about it, I knew that it was bad and wrong and sick and needed to stop, honestly. And I just have never looked back. At Moms for Liberty, we've never looked back on taking a stand on this issue.
So there's a lot of laws that are coming into play where a child can make a decision for himself to take puberty blockers. There's decisions where certain states where you have to get permission from the parents. You said there's no such thing as a transgender child. Is your idea the fact that nobody should be able to transition until they're 18 years old unless they get permission from their parents? Should it be left in the decision for the parents to help make that decision? If like, oh, I've taken my kid, or what are your thoughts right now? Do you guys have
should not be allowed. Minors under 18 should not be allowed to do any type of messing with puberty, with medical transition, with mastectomies, with castration, sterilization. We're talking about sterilizing kids. Do you know how many of these kids are on the autism spectrum? Do you know how many of these kids have experienced some type of sexual assault in the past? Are we not looking at the root issues as to why these children are heading in this trend, why they're choosing this path? So nothing under 18. And, you want to dress you're a grown man, you want to cut off your penis and wear a dress, and you can go ahead if that's what you want to do, but don't expect me to welcome you into my bathroom with my daughter when I'm in there, because you're not welcome, because you're a man, because you can't change your gender. You can dress yourself up and make yourself up and do whatever you want, but you will never change your sex.
Do you have anything? Yeah.
I certainly, I would agree with that. One thing I point out that's kind of interesting is that, if a child is diagnosed with being anorexic, they think they're fat and they're not. You don't say, oh no, you are fat. You are fat. You should probably go on a diet. Like, you don't affirm something that isn't real. You help them.
That's right.
And for adults, you could debate that when it comes to trans, but certainly I don't think there should be any debate about children. Leave them alone.
Yeah. And to think about, like, so you've got this kid who's experiencing this extreme mental distress, right? And then they go to school and they tell someone about it, and you're not going to involve the parent. I mean, if the child's suicidal, would you not involve the parent? If the child said that they were bulimic and they're throwing up, would you not involve the parent? And to your point, if your daughter had anorexia and you supported that and you got her lap band surgery, can you imagine a doctor doing lap band surgery? There's an analogy of people saying, well, my kid felt like a pirate. Good thing I didn't, poke his eye out and put a patch on it and cut off his hand and put a hook. But and you're laughing. A boy wanting to be a girl might as well be a child wanting to be a pirate. That's it, honestly.
Yeah. And Title IX to me was all about protecting women's spaces. How do you protect women's spaces? If anybody, I mean, really, to tell you the truth, that's what I look at. Wait, wasn't Title IX to protect women's spaces? Now I can just say, well, I identify as a woman. I can go in that bathroom. I mean, it's just crazy and bizarre. So the last thing I want to talk about before we get you out of here, Miss Justice, is your thoughts on Freemasons. I've asked you before because
into Freemasons with you.
No, not at all. No. You don't want to talk a little bit about
really
it?
Off mission. I'll talk about parental rights. I'll talk about the law. Right. I'll talk about literacy rates. We really didn't dig into that. We can talk about social emotional learning as a programming mechanism to have children subvert their internal feelings and in service of the collective good. Sounds a lot like communism, Craig.
Well, which one of those do you want to talk about then? Are those three? Do you think it's more?
I want to talk about Moms for Liberty, why it's awesome, and why I think the media.
Let's finish up and then talk about what Moms of Liberty are there for, and forget my last subject that I want to talk about there. I understand, but go ahead and give us a final breakdown then about Moms for Liberty, where people can get involved, what you're all about, how they can find out what's going on with this battle for Title IX. And whatnot. So please.
Awesome. Yeah. So go to momsforliberty.org. You can click on the map. We've got a big map there. Click on your state. See if we have a chapter in your community. If we don't, click to start one. Here's the deal. The media has wanted to portray us and make us untouchable. The SPLC designated us a hate group. The DOJ and Merrick Garland called us domestic terrorists. We had the FBI calling our moms. Why are parental rights such a threat? Why is it such a threat to the federal government of the United States of America that parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their child? It's a God-given right. If you don't believe in God, it's a natural right, inalienable right. So why such a threat? Well, because we're standing in defense of our parental rights and of our families and of our country. And so if that sounds good to you and you want to help to fight for the future of America, please join us. So you can click to join as a national member. We have a lot of great things that happen. We do a book club every month. We have a ton of resources coming out. As Craig mentioned, we have a wonderful Title IX resource page where you can go and you can see the 8 different lawsuits that have been filed so far. You can see the letters that superintendents have sent to their school districts. So lots of great information and other resources on that page. We have a national summit coming up at the end of August in Washington, D.C., where you can join us. And Craig, it was so much fun to meet you in Austin and to moderate the Is America Becoming Communist panel. It was a great time.
Yeah. And I think we all agreed, no, it's not. It's becoming a technocratic, woke, fascist country. But then we can
call it whatever you want.
Call it whatever you want. But it's definitely a captured country. We have a lot of problems. I mean, they are trying to destroy the family. What we see going on in the schools is kind of crazy. What we see going on in the courts is kind of crazy. Economically, civil liberties wise, everything is coming down on us. It's a lot of crazy times. Thank you so much, Tiffany Justice, Moms for Liberty, for joining us today. We appreciate you coming on. Please go check out her work. Take a look at their work on Title IX. Throw your opinion in there. And if you want to support. And if you have something to say negatively, you can reach out to Tiffany. She's always willing to give a honest answer. I think you have a lot of guts. You go on shows like Joy Reid. They don't even let you speak half the time, but you do an amazing job. And thank you so much for coming on this show.
Thanks. It was so nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tiffany Justice, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.